Let's make a plant-based chocolate little layer cake. Welcome back to the Whole Food Plant-Based Cooking Show, where we make plant-based cooking easy. I'm Jill, and today we're gonna make this adorable little chocolate little layer cake, or Smith Island cake from Maryland. Just a little debate on where it came from originally, but the southern little layer cake is from Alabama. And the Smith Island cake is from Maryland. So who knows? But I found this picture a few years ago and I just fell in love with the look of it. And of course it's a chocolate layer cake, so chocolate cake. Delicious. So I figured out how to make a smaller version of this cake. Normally it's a bigger cake, about this big, but we're gonna make it about this size. So it's perfect for sharing with someone special. So we're gonna jump right in. I've got a cup of rolled oats here that we're gonna grind into a flour. And I'm just gonna use my NutriBullet here, but whatever small blender you have should work just fine. And sometimes when you're making flours like this, not all of the oats get ground up. So you just have to, give it a little bit of a shake or tilt your NutriBullet just a little bit while it's grinding. There we go. That will do just fine. Okay, so just add that to our mixing bowl. Then I have 1/4 of a cup of arrowroot flour or arrowroot powder. You could also use cornstarch. And this is 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda and 3/4 of a teaspoon of baking powder. And we're just gonna mix that up here with a whisk just to make sure that all of those things are incorporated really well before we put the wet ingredients in. Okay. Now we're gonna mix up our wet ingredients. So I've got 6 Deglette dates. If you're using medjool dates, you could probably go with about 3 and that'll be just fine. 1 teaspoon of white wine vinegar. 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. And 1½ cups of unsweetened soy milk. But you can use whatever plant-based milk you like. But I always stress that you go with unsweetened because the sweetness we're using is coming from the dates, which is a whole food sweetener. Now we're just gonna mix this up until the dates are really finely ground. Okay, now we're just gonna pour that into our dry mixture. And mix it up really well. And I already have my oven preheated to 350 degrees. And I have a piece of parchment paper on my cookie sheet. And that is necessary because these little cakes, the reason why they call it a chocolate little layer cake is that the layers are so thin. They're just like, maybe like little crepes almost, about that thickness. All right, so once you get that mixed up really well, then we're gonna pour it out onto our cookie sheet here. And you're just gonna kind of pour it in a line. Because it's so thin, you kind of have to just move it around. It's better to pour it around instead of just pouring it in a big pile and then trying to spread it around with your spatula, because it's hard to get it a consistent thickness. There we go. And you want to go pretty far out to the edges because we're using a cookie cutter, or I'm sorry, like a biscuit cutter. And you're gonna need to get at least 8 layers or 8 little cakes out of there. So you kind of got to go out pretty far. The way they make the original one is that they make all of the little cakes, but it takes forever. And you got to have quite a few little cake pans So this way, it's so much simpler. It's really quick and easy. And you can make this really beautiful little cake that's gonna look so professional when you cut into it. But it's not gonna take you that much time at all. So now we're just gonna stick this into the oven for anywhere from 15 to 17 minutes. Okay, so while your cakes are in the oven, we are gonna get our chocolate frosting soaking. So I've got a half a cup of Gluten dates here, 2 tablespoons of almond flour, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder, and then I have 3/4 of a cup of boiling water. And this is a boiled chocolate icing. It's kind of an old-fashioned way of doing it. When you use a boiled water or really hot water, it really brings out the flavor of the chocolate more. So you just want to put it in there, and we're just going to let it sit here and soak while those are baking, just to soften up those dates really well before we blend it. While we're waiting for that, I'd like to share some background on our show. The Whole Food Plant-Based Cooking Show is crowd-funded, which means these free weekly recipe videos, along with our entire catalog of free printable recipes on our website, plantbasedcookingshow.com, and our Plant-Based Cooking Made Easy cookbook series, are all made possible in part by the generous patronage of our supporting membership community. So if you love our recipes, I invite you to join us on our mission to make plant-based cooking easy, and follow the link in the description to become a supporting member today. There's no denying the plant-based diet is a nutrient powerhouse, but did you know there are a handful of hard-to-get nutrients even well-crafted diets are often lacking? The latest research suggests that complementing your diet with a few specific vitamins, minerals, and omega-3s will help boost your energy and keep you thriving for the long term. That's why my daily health routine includes Complement Essential. Complement Essential contains the 8 critical nutrients lacking from most plant-based diets in dosages optimized specifically for us. Plus, Complement is completely transparent about ingredient sourcing and third-party testing, publishing the results directly on their website. As a special discount for our viewers, just use code PLANTBASEDEASY at checkout to save 15% off of your order. All right, our cake is out of the oven and I've let it cool for about 5 minutes or so. It can still be just slightly warm, but you don't want it to be hot. So next we're going to mix up our soaked frosting here. And really, you just want this to be super silky. Get all of those date chunks out of there, and then we can start with this. Okay, let's see what we've got here. That looks beautiful. Look at that, nice and shiny and glossy. Just gonna scrape it down off the edges here a little bit. Okay, set that aside. Next, we're gonna cut our little circles here. So I've got a biscuit cutter here. I just bought a set that had all of these multiple sizes. So this is a 3.8 inch circle, but you could do a 3.5 also. That would be fine. Or even if you had a 4 inch, but if you do a 4 inch, you might not get as many little cake sections here. So you're just gonna press it down, twist a little bit, just like you would a biscuit. But this cake's kind of spongy, so it's not gonna get cut super precise on the edges, but that's okay because the frosting just drizzles down over the edge, covers up all of the raw cake edge. So I'm shooting for 8 cakes here. And if you have more, if you have a smaller cutter, you can go higher too, but you know, if you get too much higher than that, the cake gets a little precarious and, you know, a little tippy. So 8 is a good number. There we go. Okay, I'm gonna flip this over here. And I'm just gonna do this, I'm gonna make the cake onto this little, this is just my springform bottom and a piece of parchment. Just so that once, after it's cooled a bit, then we can slide it off and put it on a nice cake plate or something, because that frosting is going to ooze down and it's kind of going to make a little bit of a mess. But it's not a big enough cake to do on a wire rack, you know, to let the drips fall through. It's really hard to move that thing once you get all those layers going. So we're going to start with our first layer. You have to gently, gently, gently peel it off this parchment. These layers are so thin that they're kind of delicate. You just put your first one down. Then we're going to put just a glob. I just do a glob in the middle. And then I put the next cake down. And I just press the middle. And I kind of press it out so that the cake or the frosting kind of oozes out to the edges. I don't want to do too much because I don't want it already oozing out. And you just go like that. You just keep repeating that until you use up all of your layers. Okay, so now we have all our layers down. Now we get to frost the rest of it. And what I usually do, I just kind of put a glob on the top first. Oh, and there's a piece of date in there that didn't get blended up. Sometimes that happens with these mixers. They just can't get all of the date blended up. So then I just kind of push it out to towards the side, and I kind of let it ooze down, and then I kind of catch it while it's going down. Just so that I don't waste any of that frosting in a pool on the bottom. So I'm going to finish frosting this and I'll show you when I'm done. Okay, I'm done. If you want to come in and take a closer look, it is adorable. And a couple tips for the frosting. If you want to make it just easier, because I usually just make just enough to cover it, but it's really easier if you make a double batch. And then if you want to make sure you get all those date chunks out of there, you can run it through a little sieve just to make sure it's really nice and glossy. So I'm going to put this in the fridge for just a bit to let it set up. It's really best if you can put it in the refrigerator overnight, because then it's much easier to cut and to serve. So, but you can also eat it just warm straight off the plate too. So I'm going to stick this in the fridge for just a bit, and then I'll meet you at the table for a taste. All right, let's get a slice of this little guy. Ooh, it is so spongy. Can't wait to dig into this. Now it hasn't set up completely. I didn't leave it that long in their fridge, so it's still very delicate. See if we can get this out of here. Ooh, it's gonna fall apart. There we go. Oh, that frosting. Yum. This is so good. You're not even going to want to share. Come on back next week for another great recipe.